Yo, everybody. Welcome to Off Panel, a weekly interview podcast about all things comics. I'm your host, David Harper, and this week's guest is the artist of comics like E is for Extinction, Nighthawk, and the recently launched Border Town, as well as the man people call Mr. Vertigo Comics. It's Ramon Villalobos. Thanks for coming on, Ramon.
Oh, thank you.
So we're going to get into Border Town here in a bit, but we have to start with the big topic of the day. I saw you tweet a little bit about it. I think it's hilarious. Do you think Captain Marvel should have punched an old lady in the new trailer? Are you in or out on that?
I mean, is that a big topic of the day? Yeah, I mean, I'm all in favor of it. Have you ever ridden the bus?
I have ridden the bus. I've never wanted to punch an old lady, though.
Man, when I ride the bus, I want to punch all kinds of people. That was cathartic. That was a moment. What I don't understand is everybody's telling me that this movie's set in the 90s, like it's set in the 90s, it's set in the 90s, but like I don't see why, or like I don't see anything that indicates that it is.
There's a Blockbuster video, I guess. I mean, that was pretty much it.
Okay.
Yeah, and she wears a Nine Inch Nails t-shirt in the in like the set photos. I don't know. I mean, I imagine there's gonna be more.
When they did that. Oh, go ahead.
I said I imagine there's gonna be more in the actual movie, but they didn't really touch on that very much in there. I don't really know why it's set in the 90s, but I also don't know much about the story yet.
Did they have any music on it that was like 90s music? 'Cause I didn't watch the actual trailer. I just watched like clips.
Oh, okay. No, not really. It was kind of like weird, like synthy electronic stuff in the beginning, and then it became like triumphant superhero music.
Oh, that's lame. Like, because like Guardians of the like, you know what the thing about Marvel movies is? There is no like, none of those movies have like themes that are in any way iconic. Like, there's nothing that like screams this is like a movie that's like specific to that movie, but also like part of the Marvel universe, except for when they use like pop songs.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Iron Man has like when they would play like Black Sabbath or AC/DC, and then, you know, the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, obviously, Black Panther, obviously, like unless they do, like the Thor Ragnarok, they were using like Led Zeppelin and shit.
Yeah.
Like unless there's those things, like there is no iconic sound for any of those movies. So I feel like that's a missed opportunity to like root it in the 90s and also like make it like in any way like distinct. Like how much more hot would that trailer have been if they would have had just like any pop song from the 90s, really?
Yeah. Well, not even pop song. I mean, like she's wearing a Nine Inch Nails shirt. You could easily find a Nine Inch Nails track that would probably fit it tonally, but I don't know. I guess I never really thought about that. The thing that always bothers me about the Marvel movies, like music wise, is the fact there's like actual scores have like no impact. You almost can't think of anything from it. And it's like, I don't know. You think about most iconic, like big shared universe stories like Jurassic Park. Everybody knows that theme, and it's Marvel's
Star Wars. The Batman movies did,
right? The
Superman movies, like not the new ones, but like the original ones. Like most of those movies have like themes that are identifiable, but the Marvel movies are so like dry. But that's like a bigger issue with those movies in general. Like they always feel kind of like just TV shows that are like expensive to make. Because like there's no visual like interest like when you watch those movies either, really. Like the shots are always as like they're just as efficient as possible.
I mean, the dudes who are making the actual like Avengers Infinity War and whatever the hell they're calling the fourth one actually started with TV. They did like Community, and actually they did a lot of Community. I'm trying to remember what else they did, but still, I mean, I think they're very good at doing what they're trying to accomplish, but they're not trying to accomplish like really incredible looking visuals outside of CGI fights, which I don't know.
That's a bummer.
I enjoy it, but they certainly like limit themselves in a lot of ways. But of course, I'm also a person who rewatches those movies like crazy. But
yeah, like when the first Iron Man movie came out, it was like notably like, oh, this has an aesthetic that it like had a tone to it that set it apart from like the movies that had come before it, like Marvel and like DC movies that come before it. But then all of them just kind of adapted that same sort of like lots of medium shots, like just punchy dialogue. That's like, it's just, it makes all of them feel flat. Like it probably, I imagine if you watch that movie now, it doesn't feel as like, revolutionary as it did when it came out. Cause it felt like the movie came out like, whoa, this is like a good superhero movie. And now you bet you watch it, it's like, oh, this is just a superhero movie.
I kind of feel like Ragnarok and Black Panther and Guardians kind of broke from that, which is part of the reason why all three of those were much bigger hits than people expected. I mean, like a part of
Yeah.
it. It's not everything, but I mean, like you look at Ragnarok. I mean, Black Panther, and he actually had like Ryan Coogler bringing on his own people, and you had like Kendrick Lamar doing music for it, and it's just, I don't know, it actually had its own vibe, which I think is a big part of the reason why people connected to it. It just wasn't like cookie cutter.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm sure we could go on about this forever. Let's get into some, like, I want to start with some broader art talk in your own background.
Sure.
I wanted to talk a little bit about what influenced you growing up. I know you're like a Frank Quitely lover, and I see a lot of like Raphael Grandpa and Jeff Darrow and your stuff. But when I was like researching for this podcast, I discovered you didn't really grow up on, with comics, at least not at first. So early on, I'm sure you were drawing even early on. What inspired you early on outside of comics? Was there anything in particular?
So my first memories of like just life in general, my earliest memories are like art related. Like I remember my earliest memory period is my sister and I coloring. Like it was like an Easter coloring book, and she yelled at me for going outside the lines. So then I never colored from like 2 to like 13. I just did not color.
Really?
Like I'm just like, listen, I don't color. I'm not good at it. I don't do that. Okay. But my like second one is my uncle. I was like I was in his room, and he had a drawing on his desk of Carnage fighting Wolverine.
Ooh.
And I thought it was the sickest thing I'd ever seen. Right? Like I was like, this is fucking incredible. And I don't know if he drew it or if it was like something that like he like got a drawing from like Wizard or something.
Mm-hmm.
And or what, like it could have just been a comic that he had out, because he used to read comics, and he just had it on his desk, and I thought, wow, this is incredible. And I asked him to teach me how to draw, because he said he drew it. I'm like, oh, this is so cool. And he's like, oh yeah, I drew that. Like, oh, can you teach me how to draw? And he said no. He's like, no, I don't want to do that. And we went and played hockey or whatever. But then like I went home and I immediately started like, I'm going to learn how to draw Wolverine.
Yeah.
Like that's, it's going to be a life mission. So like, and I love the X-Men cartoon, specifically like the X-Men one, and then like to a lesser degree, Spider-Man, Batman, and all the other ones. But the X-Men one was so hot to me, and I like begged my mom to take me to a comic book store. But my mom is a single mom, and she just didn't have like a lot of resources and didn't have a lot of time. So what she took me once to a comic book shop, and she let me pick out one comic book, right?
Yeah.
And it was an X-Men comic. I remember the cover, but I still don't know what it is. And there were so many 90s like X-Men comics that I'll probably never know what it was. But I remember it was like whitish background with like a bunch of characters on the cover, and I was like, oh, can I get this one? She said, yeah. So she bought it, and I ruined it, like immediately just thrashed it, like a 4-year-old would. And then I would ask her like to go back, and she's like, well, what happened to the comic that I got you? And I was like, never mind. Yeah, that one got fucked up. So like, you're right. There's a consequence of like messing up that comic that was able to, like, she 100% knew like what was going to happen to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, so I didn't read comics growing up. I would just play video games or like watch cartoons about comic book stuff. And we had some action figures, like Christmas, and I had like 2 brothers, so like we would get action figures together. So we had a bunch of like stuff from like X-Men action figures and stuff like that, Batman ones, and that was like in lieu of comics, it was just like outside media, right? Like that's all that I give a shit about. And then when I was in like probably like 6th grade, me and my friends got like more independent, and we would just like ride our bikes around town and go to the comic book shop. They went for like Pokemon, but I never had money for that kind of shit. So I would like just look at like, quarter bins, or if I had like, a $5 bill, I would like buy a comic. And, I would buy like Nightwing or Green Lantern because they were like the coolest looking ones. And that was like, that I had like, for most of my life up until high school, I had like 5 comics, but they were the most important 5 comics for me, you know? Like they were everything. I read the shit out of them.
Yeah.
And um then when I was in high school, I started going to the library, and the library you could check out books. And so I would just check out like 20 at a time, and I read fucking everything. And it was crazy, like the amount of comics that I read when I was in like junior year, senior year, and then when I got out of high school, I started going to like community college. It was like it just got probably a little worse even.
Hmm.
Like I read so much shit in that like short period of time, and yeah,
Was it like a little bit of everything?
yeah, it was a lot of DC comics. Because I think the library just had more of them,
Sure.
and they were easier to sort of figure out like what was going on than the Marvel ones, which you know Marvel's kind of like notoriously bad with like trade, like the trade program,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like it's not great,
Hmm.
and um, so they just didn't have a lot at the library.
Right.
So I would just check out as much DC stuff, and yeah, occasional like Ultimate Spider-Man, you know, stuff like that.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, no, so it was like that. And then when I was graduating, I was working a little bit, and I started going to the comic shop to get comics when I thought that they were going to kill Kyle Rayner.
Hmm.
I thought like 'cause that was like a rumor on the DC message boards. And so I was like, "Oh, fuck that. If they're going to kill it, like I want to like see that shit." And then yeah, like right before that and then All-Star Batman and Robin The Boy Wonder came out,
Hmm.
and those were the two that was like, "Okay, I'm in now."
That was like the Frank Miller and Jim Lee one, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I've never actually read
It's
that.
so good. What?
I've never read it. I heard it's like
Oh, it's
completely nuts though,
amazing.
and it never actually finished, right? I think that's like the thing I know most about is the fact that like it never actually finished.
Yeah, it got super late and then it never finished.
Yeah.
Jim Lee one time said that he has like at the bottom of his desk a bunch of scripts that were done, but he just never got around to doing.
Yeah.
So it's a bummer because that was to me like peak Jim Lee. Like because I had read a bunch of other stuff like at the library. I read Hush. I read like some of the stuff that he did right before that.
Hmm.
Uh, but I think that that's like his most like sort of detailed, and also like the like that aesthetic. He was pushing that like 90s aesthetic as far as he was going to do it.
Hmm.
But just like the style of it, not like obviously like powers and that kind of shit. But yeah, no, I love that comic. It's so good. It's like if Batman was young, it was like if it was like 1960s Batman in the Frank Miller universe, because he's like having a good time being Batman.
Right.
Like he's not like he's not sulky. He's like a rich young man who like makes out with like the prettiest women in
Hmm.
Gotham, and like gets into fights and like blows shit up for fun. You know,
Yeah. So it was like Dark Knight
it's
Returns like minus 40 years.
yeah, except for like he's not really having that much fun, and like initially yes, but like he gets real miserable real fast. But that's the general idea.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, it's like it's definitely not as like serious as year one, which is what I think people wanted. But I
Yeah.
feel like year one he's learning how to become Batman, and then in this one he's Batman, and he can do whatever. He's like a fucking lunatic.
Okay, maybe I have to read that, but I don't know. It kind of feels like one of those comics I should just read, but I don't know. I think when it started coming out, I was just getting back into comics because I stopped reading comics for like 3 years in like the early 2000s. And I think thanks to Wizard, it was like each issue was like $15 or something like that. I'm like, I'm not going to spend my money on $15 issues of this comic that's not over. No way. And now it's probably available digitally for like nothing. So I'll probably read it at some point. Kyle Rayner, though, they never actually killed him. Did they kill him?
No, they
No,
didn't.
I didn't think so. I was a
They
Kyle
just kind
Rayner
of
guy.
they made him. Yeah, they made him like a Green Lantern Corps. Like he was the head of that book, and then they like would move him around to whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're constantly threatening to kill him. Like
I,
they're threatening to kill him right now.
yeah, and like Heroes in Crisis, right?
Yeah,
Isn't he one of like the people
like
like one of these people will die?
yeah, he's one of those. He's constant. Like they hate him.
I feel like Tom King probably hates him, given the fact that Tom King like constantly had the threat. I think they like basically fake killed him in Omega Men, and so
Yeah.
Yeah, Tom King, always against Kyle Rayner. I don't know what his beef is.
No, but I loved Omega Men. I
Yeah.
mean, and like there was that part where he's like doing the rosary in Spanish and shit. I'm like, Tom King's one of the few people that like cares that he's Mexican
Mm-hmm.
or like has Mexican, whatever. I think that's so sick.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Shout out to Andy Corey editing that. He's my guy.
Yeah, he's editing
He's my
Bordertown,
editor.
isn't he?
Yes, he is.
That's awesome.
So, but anyways, drawing, yes, I did that my whole life, and like that was just, but mainly like just horror shit, like scary clowns, metal bands, stuff like that. So, yeah, until I learned about comics again when I was in high school, and then I wanted to draw comic books.
I saw a Slipknot piece by you that you posted.
Yeah, I have tons.
Yeah, I mean, like, I was doing the same thing back in the day. I just never advanced past because I wasn't good. I would draw bands. I would mostly draw Wolverine, to be honest. I drew a lot of Arsenal. I don't know why I drew so much Arsenal. I liked Arsenal's costume.
Have any of it still?
Oh, yeah, it's horrible.
Post it.
I thought about it. But the problem is like there's like zero differentiation between when I was drawing when I was 5, 15, or 25. My skills never advanced whatsoever.
Did you ever read How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way?
I have it like right to my right. My wife actually bought me a new copy for Christmas one year because I talked about how much I loved it when I was a kid. But I never really understood, like, you know how they would always draw like the circles for like the head
Yes.
and like where everything would go? For some reason that never made sense in my head. I was just like, okay, so I've drawn the circles.
In all the other
that?
In all the other How to Draw books, you're right. It doesn't make any sense. But in that one, I felt like it really clicked when I got that. My grandmother found a copy at like a garage sale, and she gave it to me because I like to draw. And like I read it, and I was like, I got it. Like at first, I just traced Iron Man, Captain America, and shit. But then after like I read it like one summer, I was like, oh, like this is the reason why you do this. Like there's structure to this. And then like then after that, I kind of got that. But yeah, no, that like. There is no like comic artist I think that's like around now that didn't read that growing up on some level. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
It's like so crazy.
It makes a lot of sense that like all the stuff when I look at it now, but when I was a kid, like this is literally how like literal I was about it. I was like, but if I draw the circles everywhere, then I'm gonna have circles in my drawings, and then that's gonna cover up the eyes and everything. And I was like, oh wait, I can erase it once I use the pen. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I realized that a little too late. Actually, I did want to bring up one other thing in like how you learned art. You like kind of you accidentally started studying under Tony D. Zuniga, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So I lived in Stockton when I was for a long time. When I was going to community college, I would go to the comic shop that had opened up like a couple blocks north of my house. So I would just go there, hang out. It was honestly like not a good store. Like the people there were great, but like it was just so disorganized, and like every time I would go in there, they would have moved something around that just like fundamentally destroyed like something else. And like they were the kind of dudes that would work there where you'd be like, "Oh, can I get Nightwing?" And they'd be like, "Oh, you read Nightwing?" like it was that kind of shit.
Yeah.
Like they were too cool for school. Like they all wanted to read just like whatever Warren Ellis was putting out. And if I would go in there like, oh yeah, I just want to read like whatever, they would just look at me like I was fucking stupid. And I remember like the indie comics that I did like, they did not like.
Oh my
God. I was like, oh yeah, can you put in an order for American Splendor? And they were just like, I mean, yeah, I can.
Theoretically.
Like, well, I was like, well, can you then? And then like I came in the next month and they didn't order it. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? So yeah, but that's the kind of shit. Like, so I would go into that shop, and then Tony's shop was like in that same shopping center. Like,
did he own a restaurant, right? Oh, a gallery. That was it. Yeah.
His wife owns a restaurant.
Oh, okay.
Downtown Stockton. But he owned like a little gallery, and so one of the guys was like, oh, have you ever talked to Tony? And like I said all that about those dudes. They were all my friends.
Right.
Like. I need to be clear about that. Like they were just shitty, but they were all my friends. But they were like, "Oh, have you ever talked to Tony?" I'm like, no. So I like walked over and I was like looking at the like the art on the wall because he would put up like, he had inked Todd McFarlane, so he had pieces of his stuff, like some Batman stuff that he had done, and his wife was there, Tina, and she was like, "Oh, you know, this is my husband's stuff. Do you like comic books?" I'm like, "Oh yeah." And she was like, just started talking to me, and I mentioned that I like to draw. So, because I was like staring at it for like, you know, an hour,
Right.
right? It wasn't like I just walked in, glanced, and then walked out. I was there for like a decent amount of time, just
Mm-hmm.
kind of like staring at the shit. And she was like, "Oh, you know, you seem pretty interested in that." And I told her I was an artist. She goes, "Oh, really? Every Wednesday, we have people come over for like Tony comes out and like we just do like live drawings and stuff. You could
Mm-hmm.
like meet him." So I'm like, "Oh wow." I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "It starts at 7." And I was like, "Oh shit, that's like in like 15 minutes."
Mm-hmm.
So like I like ran home, got my shit, came back and like met Tony, and then they after the first day they invited me to just come back every week because he liked me, and he would look at my stuff and give me advice. Like the first day he did that, and then as just like it was for like maybe like a year and a half, and then he moved to LA.
Mm-hmm.
But he would like look at my stuff and like draw on like a flip side of the paper of like
Mm-hmm.
what I was doing,
Oh, that's
and like
cool.
he was so good. Even he was pretty old at that point. You know, he had passed away a couple years back, but he was still like amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Like basically, what we would do is we would either have a model come in that was like, you know, some young model that was like a friend of the family, or he would like invite people in off the street that were
Mm-hmm.
like there was a bar next door, so people would be, like kind of drunk, and he would like if there was like a young woman who was kind of like a little tipsy, he'd be like, "Oh, come in here," and like he would give her coffee and like tell her that, you know, she could, you know, if she wanted she could draw, like if we could draw her, just, you know, just like chilling, just, like sitting down or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he just drew like these people with like the most beautiful versions of themselves.
That's awesome.
And like yeah, he would like look at us and like be very like complimentary, and like but also like teach us like little things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's just like little things about drawing like a figure that I still is just like intuitive, because he would like teach me every time like how to not be stiff, you
Right.
know, like shit like um but yeah, he was amazing. He towards the end, when I would see him at like WonderCon or whatever, and he would be like, "Oh, they want me to do a Jonah Hex thing. Do you want to ink me on it?" And I was like, "Tony, like, I appreciate that, but I'm not really not good enough to ink you on this
Mm-hmm.
stuff." He goes, "No, no, you're ready, you're ready." And he would look at my like the stuff that I had with me and be like, "Oh, no, 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 you're so talented. You need to ink me. We need to work together." And I was like, "Yeah, man, you're like a comic legend." Like, I'm like, I don't want to mess up your stuff. Um, but he was, yeah, no, he was the best.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's super like generous with his time, and yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. I was reading about that, and it just seems like that would be such like an incredible experience to be able to learn from. Especially, you know, not everybody has like you have like books like, you know, Learn How to Draw the Marvel Way and everything like that, but you don't really have a real person to talk to that can like share their experience and knowledge. And having somebody like Tony, that's amazing.
yeah, he's super underrated. I think because he sort of brought in like the Filipino artist that like maybe like Ernie Chan, who was just like a, he was cleaner,
Mm-hmm.
and Tony was always kind of like it was more organic, and I think it was stuff that if he would have been like maybe a few years later, that would have been that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at that like Jonah Hex stuff or the Black Orchid stuff and any of that stuff, like he was very like experimental
Mm-hmm.
and like very illustrator. So yeah, he was really good though. He was
Yeah.
amazing.
So I want to talk about something I came across in an interview with you where I thought this was super interesting. You talked about how Raphael Grandpa would do like a Daredevil cover or something, and it would be like 100% his, and how you wanted your work to do the same thing, where it had like more of your personality in it. You said in the
Yeah.
interview, you said like, and I quote, "So it's not just a drawing of Batman; it's my drawing of Batman." And I think I think that's really cool because a lot of times, like, you look at art, and sometimes people are trying to be somebody else, or people are trying to like, you know, not necessarily embrace what they bring to the art. Like, do you feel like you're at a place where you do like when you're drawing something, particularly like for higher projects, that it's like 100% your own version of what you're trying to do?
Yeah, I mean like so especially with commissions, because with commissions it's like an illustration, so you don't have to like do that over and over. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like that's you can draw it once and you're good.
Mm-hmm.
But like yeah, with comics, I feel like I'm still not quite there yet. Like I feel like I'm still working on like the aesthetic that I'm going to land on.
Right.
But it's so like it is like just constantly hammering it down. Like guys like Grandpa, they've been, you know, he's had it for so long, but those guys are like rare, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, like I'm still not quite there yet. But I feel like, especially in like commissions and stuff, I'm much closer because I feel like I do bring in elements of like different cultures that I feel like are not seen often in comic book art,
Sure.
and people like they do harp on like the shoes and shit like that, but it's everything though. It's like it's more, it's a mixture of like the wrestling stuff. It's a mixture of like just like a weightiness to it that I think that maybe other people that have a similar style don't have.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that I do, and there's like it's a mixture of a lot of things, but yeah, I'm still nailing it down. I'm not at the end of that road yet. I don't think.
No, well, I mean, yeah, I mean, you've been, I mean, when did you really get into comics? Like, your first stuff was in like the mid, it was like 2006 or 2007 or so. When was it? Like, because the first time I was aware of you was LP that you did with Kurt Pyers, and
Right.
and I don't. When did you first start?
Start drawing comics.
No, yeah, I guess like as like a when did you first start drawing comics that you would sell? I guess.
Um. So when I got out of high school, I moved to Stockton, where I'd been living in Stockton, but I was taking a bus to Manteca, which is a town like 20 minutes south
Mm-hmm.
of Stockton, and I was going to that school because I really liked the art stuff. And my mom was very supportive of that. She was like, okay, yeah, as long as you have good grades, you can continue to go to that school because we did like murals and shit like that.
Right.
And I wanted to do art as like a career. So she helped me do that. But the downside was, as soon as I moved to Stockton, like for good, I didn't have any friends in the area.
Mm-hmm.
So like I remember that summer I just uploaded like 2 years worth of drawings to like DeviantArt, and like I was just like on the internet like a lot, and I wanted to like make friends that did that kind of shit. And where I ended up was a place that was like a DC Comics like fan fiction and fan art like site where it was like a shared universe where like everybody's kind of like cooperating to like make like a DC Comics universe. It was kind of cool, and like I have some friends there that are like still my friends. Like one of my best like buddies in comics, Craig Cermak. Are you familiar with him or?
You did. Okay, I'm trying to remember the book. You did a book with him called.
Yeah, Vitruvian Underground.
Yeah, that's it. And you wrote it, right?
I wrote that and I colored it. Yeah,
Okay.
but he does like he did that Red Team book with Garth Ennis, and he's working on a couple projects now. He's like super talented, and he's been that way since he's been like 15. But I met him on those message boards, and the message board was like people that were like, they just like to do like fan art and shit, and they would teach. They would like tell me like give me advice on like things that I could do to get better, and they would tell me like what the cool comics were because I had been reading everything, but I wasn't very selective. And they're like, well, you should read this because this is good, you know. So then like yeah, they were like the Vertigo Comics and shit. Like they were the ones that were like you should read Animal Man and shit like that. But yeah, when I was through them, I would do like a shit ton of fan art. Like after this thing, I'll share with you privately like the site that's still up, and it has like all of my fan art. It's a psychotic amount. I've shown it to Tamra before, Bonvillain, my colorist, and she's like, "This is insane." But then towards the end of that, I was just like, dude, I want to get better at actually drawing, and I won't do that drawing like 5 or 6 drawings a week. So after that, one of the guys from that site was like, I'm putting together an anthology for comics, and me and Craig are both in this thing called Psychotronic Comics Presents, and I feel like that was in '09, and that was the first year that I did it. And I did everything on it. I like penciled, inked, colored, lettered it,
Mm-hmm.
and I just posted that stuff recently because Christian Ward had put up like his drawings from like 10 years ago, and it was like this huge, like he was so good back then, but like his stuff has evolved so much.
Mm-hmm.
My stuff was not good back then.
I think it's so cool seeing that stuff and seeing how people evolve. I mean, people that aren't me, because I didn't evolve at all.
Yeah, so like my stuff from 9 years ago, it's like there are elements of it that I see that are the same, but so much of it is different. Like I didn't draw a clear line. I didn't have like the Frank Quitely like inspired like art or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was like much different. I really love Cliff Chang, and I still do. I still think he's amazing. But that was like my favorite artist. Like Beware the Creeper.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I loved. Did you ever read Doctor 13 and the Architects of the Universe?
No.
It's an amazing comic that him and like Azzarello did. It was during the 1 year later, I think, it was during Infinite Crisis, and it was basically just they were going to get rid of a ton of characters and like streamline the DC universe. So they were going to like basically kill a bunch of like unknown lesser characters, and this character Dr. 13 is like sees that this is going to happen, and the villains of the book were the guys who wrote 52. And it was like, yeah, it was Grant Morrison, Mark Waid,
Jeff Johns and
Greg Rucka. Like they were the villains of the book, and they're just like wandering around trying to decide what characters they're going to actually save and which ones are going to be like disappeared from history.
That's hilarious.
It's like a very like meta comic. It's really good, but Cliff Chang drew the fuck out of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that. I love, that was the style that I was into, but I wasn't very good. So, yeah, it was like in 2009 is when I like started like in earnest drawing comic pages, and we put out the anthology, and then I didn't do another comic after the anthology that we did for that until LP.
Yeah. I kind of feel like, and I don't know if this is the case for you, but one of the tricky things about like being 100%, like if it's easy to own this commission and make this your version of this character in a commission, but like when you're doing for hire work, it can be more difficult because there's like expectations that come with the job. I don't know. I mean, like I kind of feel like E is for Extinction. You kind of got to run wild a bit because it was like a Secret Wars book and everything, but maybe not on every project. I don't know. Maybe I'm completely reading that wrong.
It depends on the project. I feel like I could always get a sense of how much control I was going to have just based on like the first couple pages that I turned in, right?
Yeah.
Like
how they react.
In general, I've never gotten crazy notes on anything that I've done.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but I know how to read the room on that kind of stuff. Like my first Marvel book was a book called. It was actually on my second comic that I like after LP. My second like real comic was for Marvel. Mm-hmm. But they just known me through Tumblr. Like they just reached out and asked if I wanted to do one, and I was like, "Oh, sure."
Was that the Joe Keating book?
Yes, I will take. Yeah, it was Joe Keating. It was just like a one shot, and Joe like he let me design my own Spider-Man, Hulk, Ghost Rider, mm-hmm. and Wolverine, which was crazy.
Yeah.
So, that was like that one. If you look at that book, that's like fully me. Like all the ideas in there are just like stuff that I would probably still do, honestly. And then the next one was like a tie-in for Young Avengers, and I'm like, okay, that's where I take it back a little bit,
Yeah.
Because that's not what they're looking for. But if I'm setting the direction of it from the start, then I get to do more. Like Nighthawk, I got to do more. But then I did a one-off of America, and with that one I was like very conscious to like I'm a fill-in for Joe Quinones. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm just gonna like try to not go too far outside of what Joe would do.
Right. Yo everybody, I want to take a quick break to talk about my friends at Radio vs. the Martians. Mike Gillis and Casey Doran host the Radio vs. the Martians podcast, a show that gathers their funniest, smartest friends once a month for a deep dive into science fiction, video games, horror, comics, movies, and everything in between. So far, they've dissected topics like Superman, Steven Spielberg, Akira, George Lucas, zombies, Twin Peaks, Hayao Miyazaki, James Bond, Watchmen, and whether drivers are required to pull over for the Ghostbusters. Find this podcast and its spin-off show, Podcast La Vista, baby, a celebration of the films of thespian and statesman Arnold Schwarzenegger on iTunes, Stitcher, and RadioVersusTheMartians.com. And now, back to the show. Well, let's talk about a book that you can definitely be 100% yourself in. You're doing Border Town now. I do want to ask, first question, can you get me some of the chips and salsa that were sent out to promote the book? Because I never got any. I don't know why. I want some chips and salsa.
I cannot. I don't know. I don't know who was like. I don't know who was the one who was like in charge of making the list of people for that.
Mm-hmm.
I know that like they asked me if I wanted one like later.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, I didn't know that I was gonna like get one, but you know, like I was like, you know what, just send one to my mom. So my mom got it, and then I was like, Mom, you need to put that on social media, that way I can share it. And she's like, why? I'm like, just do it, it'll be funny.
Yeah.
So she did, and she was like, you know, I love my son, I'm so proud of him, and she like put like music that like she put some like Los Lobos music behind it and shit. It was so fucking funny. And I told her like to tell my brothers and sister that like I'm her favorite and shit.
I do have to say, as far as marketing things go, that both was like super funny and smart, but also it weirdly worked on me because I had planned on buying Border Town, but I'd just gotten back from vacation and I'd forgotten it when I went to the shop, and I went to go buy dinner for my wife and I. And as I was coming home, I was like, man, I'm really hungry. I want to, you know, start jumping into some of this food. And I had tortilla chips with it, and I started eating the tortilla chips, and I was like, wait a second, I've got to get Border Town. And so I actually drove on the way home and got Border Town because I was eating tortilla chips. So good job by you, DC Publicity.
So the story with that was they had sent, you know, they did the thing with the people that put it together were the same people that put together the syrup and pancakes that they sent for Before Watchmen.
Yeah.
It was like the same company. And they had done something for DC, for Vertigo too, where they sent like Sandman people like essential oils and stuff. Like some like goth shit. And so Eric was talking to somebody at the offices, was like, oh, it'd be so cool to send people chips and salsa.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, we should do that. Like, they're like, yeah, absolutely. And it was like much more like, we were shocked, honestly. Like we thought, because they said they wanted to do something to promote the book, and we thought something cheap, but that felt like they went all out. Like it felt that way, you know. It was very cool. Like the whole Vertigo thing has been very like supportive. Like everybody has, yeah. It's been an awesome like book to work on.
It seems like editorial is like super committed to it. I mean, obviously it's like a relaunch on its 25th anniversary, so it's gonna be a big deal. But it I don't know. It seems like everybody is like really doubled down on it, which is cool because I grew up loving Vertigo, and like seeing them really committed to it is great. And also seeing the first book being awesome was great too. But wait, for listeners that don't know, I'm gonna give a quick synopsis on the book. This is exactly what it says in like I think it's in the solicit. When a crack in the border between worlds releases an army of monsters from Mexican folklore, the residents of Devil's Fork, Arizona, blame the ensuing weirdness, the shared nightmares, the otherworldly radio transmissions, the mysterious goat mutilations on goddamn illegals. With racial tensions supernaturally charged, it's up to the new kid in town, Frank Dominguez, and a motley crew of high school misfits to discover what's really going on in this town between worlds. I love it. It's by you and Eric Esquivel, Tamra Bonvillain, and more. And it's the first book in the relaunched Vertigo Comics line. How did the book come together? Like, were you and Eric developing it together, or was it something you got brought onto later,
No.
or what was it?
Yes. So Eric had been pitching this as like a backup pitch for a long time to like other companies. It was sort of like his like back pocket, like, oh, maybe I'll pitch this if you guys aren't interested in these other things that I have. And nobody was super receptive. Sure. So he was pitching to Vertigo with Jamie Rich at the time. Mm-hmm. And it was before the relaunch. And he did it not with me. Like I was sort of like no matter where he would have went, I was sort of like the guy who he's like, oh, it would be cool to work on with Ramon on this, because he had been following my work, and I'd met him once at like San Diego Comic-Con. Mm-hmm. Like I was at my Felix booth, and he came up to the booth and was like, hey, my name is Eric. I think, you know, it'd be great to work together someday. And I was like, oh yeah, cool. Thanks, man. Like, yeah, sure. Whatever. But then he was at DC, and Jamie was into it, and when they made the transfer where like Mark Doyle took over, he had been pitching other stuff, and they were just like, well, no, we want something that's like you. Like, we don't want something that anybody can do. Like, we don't want like your take on like some other Vertigo book. We want like an Eric Esquivel book or whatever.
Right.
So then he pitched them Border Town because he just had like the idea kicking around, and they were like into it. So then they had messaged me because when they pitched that book, Andy was putting together like a presentation for like the editors and for the co-publishers and stuff, and he had my art in there.
Oh, that's
Like
awesome.
unbeknownst to me. Yeah, he had my art and like I think some art from like Nick Dragata or somebody. But like I think it was like Nick because we're tight and
Yeah.
like I'm influenced a lot by Dragata as well. So
Was it because like were they
I
going
think
for a vibe thing, or was it specific art?
yeah, no, it's specific. It was like vibe. Like
Okay.
they just wanted to show like this kind of like of east of west, like that sort of like dirty,
Right.
like saturated like color like palette, and with me just like the tone, like the energy of it. So they were like into it. So then Andy like called me, or first I think it was Jamie messaged me. I was like, hey, do you want to do this book? And I was just like at the time just like super out of it, like I was just kind of like depressed, and I was just like, oh man, like I'll email this later. And then I just like kind of dropped the ball on it. And then Andy messaged me and was like, hey, can you chat? And I'm like, sure. He's like, hey, so I don't know if you know, but I'm at Vertigo now. And Ed known Andy for a while. I'm like, oh, that's awesome, man. He goes, yeah, so I would need you to do a comic with us. I think you're great on it. And I was like, oh, well, he's like, I didn't want to say it, but I'm like, like Vertigo, right before the relaunch, there was some good stuff coming out of it. Like Riley Rossmo had done was it Deathbed?
I don't remember the name of the book, but I remember him doing a book there.
Yeah, it was like it looked great. And I was like, like not like not I didn't say it, but I was like thinking like, yeah, no offense, but I don't know about like doing a Vertigo comic right now because I just don't know what like I didn't know like what the vibe was going to be,
Right.
And he was like, listen, like we want you on this book. We think it would be great, and we're like doing Vertigo like we're doing like a new launch of it, and we want you on board.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh yeah, okay, like I didn't know what that meant, but he was like, well, let me just think about it. And I was like, okay. And then I was like playing poker with my friends, and I was like, the way I play poker is just like I'm going for it, right?
Just
Like
all
I
in
feel
on
like
every
I'm
hand.
doing it. Not all in, but like I'm fucking
You bet heavy.
I'm well, just I do erratic shit. I play what is it called? Like
What, like Texas?
no, well yeah, but I'm saying like the full tilt.
Oh, okay.
like I'm doing shit that like I'm like, oh, like I just got a fucking pair of nines. Oh, there's a third nine, and they're like, yeah, right, But I would just tell them my hand, or like I would really like fuck with them.
You're just basically making them uneasy by being either honest or just like, well, I mean, when somebody says something like that, you don't really know whether or not they're telling the
Right.
truth, so it makes it impossible. I don't know. Then you want to call their bluff.
Right. So I'm doing like that, and then I get a message from Andy at like 10 at night, and is like, hey, so we got the book approved. If you want the job, it's yours.
That's awesome.
And I just kind of like I like looked up, and I was like, guys, I just got like this Vertigo offer. Do you think I should do it? And they were like, yeah, man, like go full tilt. Like that's what you're doing tonight.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was just like, all right, I'm gonna message Andy tomorrow and tell him I'm in. Right.
Yeah.
So then I did that, and yeah, and like the Mr. Vertigo Comics thing was just because we were relaunching it, and I was like, nobody like people forget like how sick Vertigo is sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Like just how many sick shit there was. So I just decided like when it became clear that we were going to be the first book out the gate, I was like, sick. I'm going to call myself Mr. Vertigo Comics. I'm going to be that. I'll be an ambassador for this. And if somebody gets mad, somebody gets mad. But they'll tell me to just change my name, and that's fine. But everybody loved it. Everybody was like, that's so funny.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So what appealed to you about the idea? I know you're like a fan of stories about teenagers. Like, was that a big part of it, or what connected you to it?
I love Dawson's Creek. I love Degrassi. I love like all that kind of shit. So, Party of Five, 90210, like those teen comedy like drama things. So like I love that. I love the horror stuff because, like I said, I was a horror guy when I was in
Mm-hmm.
high school. I like drawing creepy shit, and it's like very Mexican. So it's like a lot of the three things that I'm very passionate about and excited to do,
Mm-hmm.
like kind of all mixed into one thing. So it was like, yeah, this is perfect for me. So I mean, yeah, once I was like, okay, I'm in. Like then the book, like even though like it was written with me in mind, like I once I started sending them stuff, like the first drawing I sent to Frank, they were like, "Oh, this is perfect.
Yeah.
Like this is great," you know?
Uh-huh.
So so yeah, that was like the first cover that we did. They wanted something. They at first they like Eric had an idea in mind of like kind of what's in the cover, like in that background, like the border crossing sign with the thing off of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, I'd really like. Could we do like a group shot? Like I just think it would be better. Like think about like Breakfast Club. Think about the Teen Titans cover that Mike Turner did. I'm like, that would sell this as like a teen thing. Like teens like that, and we get to show like who these characters are in like one image. So then we got to do that, and it's just like there's so many ideas that they're so receptive of to that. Like they trust me a lot,
That's great.
and so now like I really do feel like it's my and Eric's book, and like I know these characters like as much as Eric does. So like it feels good to sort of like you know to draw this. Like I know how these characters would. I understand them like pretty well.
One thing I really like about it is the fact that like a lot of times when there's teenager stories, they try too hard to be teenagers. They try to do like really specific things, but I feel like there's a lot of really small moments and like a lot of the things you contribute to the book. Like one thing on the cover I really love is like the modified Charles Barkley Suns jersey on there, which is
Yeah.
really it's really great, but at the same time it fits with God, what is her name? Julieta? Is it yeah. Like I really like that. I mean, she's wearing like a cheerleader jersey or a cheerleader uniform in the first issue, but like that kind of fits her vibe in general. And I don't know. I mean, I like it when you have a teen story that feels like these are actually teens that are dealing with this larger crazy situation, and that's what the first issue really felt like. Because I also like teen stories, and it felt right to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the vibe was like Stranger Things or like It or E.T. or like any of those like kids get it like Goonies. Like we want to feel like an 80s thing. We want to feel like it's something that you've seen before.
Right.
But it's very contemporary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like obviously it takes place now and it's like, very like sort of racially diverse and we're playing on themes that are like I think deeper than that. So it's like a sophisticated version of that kind of thing. I feel like. But also like both Eric and I and Tamra were all like also very excited to like where we like, populist kind of entertainment as well as like the Vertigo stuff,
So I do want to talk about your art and approach on it. Like, so when you get a script from Eric, like what's your process on it? I know you're like primarily traditional, right?
Completely traditional.
Completely. All right then. So
Yeah.
so do you just
100%.
do you do like I don't know, like what's your approach once you get a script? Do you do like layouts on the script or do you just go straight into it?
Oh, I have a small book with thumbnails in it, and I just do like inch tall like thumbnails for each page.
Mm-hmm.
They're just like very scribbly, they're very loose, and then I'll transfer like that stuff onto like a artboard, and then once I send those in, usually get them approved pretty fast, and then I can start inking.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say like one shot in the I tweeted this yesterday, so you saw it, but like one shot in the first issue I loved was like when Frank was first going to school and you like depicted him skateboarding in between a bunch of students with like the camera behind him, like showing him approaching. Like that I really love that. Like that was something from a like planning out shot standpoint that I don't know what it was about it, but it just felt right, and it felt like it was a great introduction to this world and showing how he's like going into it and everything. Like for something like that, is that something that Eric like scripts very specifically or puts very specifically in the script, or is that you?
No, that wasn't like the whole thing of him being like a skateboarder was something that I've been shoehorning in the entire time. Like there was never an idea that he skated, but I think skateboarding is fascinating. I think it's so cool. So on my very first drawing of him, he's sitting on a skateboard, and then the cover, I insisted that he's holding a skateboard. And then I'm like, yeah, he needs to ride a skateboard in every issue. He doesn't. And then the third one, there's no skateboard. But I want to try to like shoehorn that in, and Eric sometimes just does not give me the opportunity to do so. because like he's writing the comic, but
Right.
like that's the kind of shit that I insert to it is like if this was a thing like um like in all those things like kids would ride like bikes and stuff,
Right.
but he's cool so he would ride a skateboard. I want like a scene where like they're all on like a bike, a skateboard, like a scooter, and like
Hmm.
like that kind of thing. I think that would be so fun. But yeah, no, like that shot specifically, it's funny that you mentioned that one because that was one of the few ones that I kind of like pulled reference of uh like something, like that's a specific shot that I was like, oh, like I want to have him drive riding up to the school. It's from a Deftones video, Back to School.
Oh,
um
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, Chino gets off the bus and he rides his skateboard into the thing like between a bunch of kids, and I was like, that's like the perfect shot. I was like, that's like I've always wanted to draw something like that. So like it was like it was just the right time. So that was it was so funny that you mentioned that because I was talking to another friend today about Back to School, and I was like, oh, by the way, like that was from that video, and he knew it. He was like, oh my god, I just fucking realized that. That yeah, okay.
Yeah, I feel like I watched, maybe subconsciously I knew that because I've seen that video like a million times.
It's a great
Um,
video.
yeah, it is a good video. But no, I think that's really awesome that you actually shoehorned the skateboarding thing in there because I feel like it says something about Frank. And like sometimes those
Yeah,
like little things that you do with characters kind of, you don't really think about it, but it adds up to him. Plus, like,
it's storytelling.
yeah, exactly. And I also always really wanted to know how to skateboard, but I was
Yeah.
terrible at it and I would just fall over all the time. So I gave
Oh,
up.
I was so clumsy.
Oh,
Um,
it just seems
my
like
friends all
really fun.
skateboarded, and it seemed expensive when I was younger. That was why I would have never done it. I
Hmm.
had a bike. Like my parents, I remember I asked for my birthday for like a Optimus Prime action figure, and they got me like a bike, and I was like, oh, and they were like so pissed because they were like, you motherfucker, like we bought you like a $200 bike. It was like a nice bike,
Right.
but like it was like a BMX bike. My stepdad was super into BMX and stuff, and he was like, they were just like, "You son of a bitch! Like we bought you a very nice bike, and you were just like, oh, it's not the $20 action figure that I had asked for." Yeah, but I was like, fucking 11 or whatever, 10.
Right.
So but then I like, then I fucking rode that bike everywhere.
Hmm.
My friends would all skateboard though, and it just seemed like, oh my god, you have to like buy wheels, you have to buy fucking trucks, you have to buy. It just seems so expensive.
Yeah, and if you break a deck, then you got to get another one. I mean, it's pretty hard to
Yeah,
break a bike. You'd have to really fuck up a bike.
yeah, and I at the time I was like so good at like changing wheels, tightening shit. Like I was pretty handy with that shit, but it seemed like a different level of handiness to like make it to do skateboarding.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like yeah, my friends would fall, and I'd just be like, "That's insane! Like you're gonna die." Um, yeah, no, all my friends were like skaters and stuff, but I think it does say something about like who that kid is. I mean, like it's part of the aesthetic of that kid. And when I started the book, I have like on a in that notebook of all my like thumbnails, I have like a breakdown of like, okay, this kid would skate, he would listen to this music, he would like be into this thing, and like I have one for every character, which is stuff that Eric kind of implies, but all the character like information in the script is like pretty minimal because I think he wanted me to be able to infuse that personality into it as much as possible. Like for Quinte, the kid with the mask, it just says he has a mask and he's tall. Um, so like my idea for him was like this kid, he doesn't have a lot of money. He lives on like a Native American reserve, which, spoiler alert.
Hmm.
But he lives in like, he's a tribe guy. So I was like, yeah, those people don't have a lot of money. Everything would have to be Goodwill bought. And for Julieta, she's like this overachiever, like cool young girl who probably listens to like SZA and like cool R&B music.
Hmm.
Like she's a woke teen and very like smart, like above her years. So I wanted her to have like just like athletic gear that feels like kind of sophisticated but not too much. And Amy is like a young artist, and I wanted her to be like a hipster
Hmm.
kind of character, but not like obnoxiously so. Just that's the kind of clothes she wears.
Right.
So it's not like fashion, where some artists that I like some of my friends, they do fashion. It's like oh, that is like high fashion.
Right.
Like this is just streetwear fashion. And like when I go to like a mall and I see how a kid dresses, I'll like just kind of put it in my memory, like, oh, okay, I see. Like that's what that person is wearing. You know, that's what that kind of kid wears.
Yeah.
And it just sort of informs the it informs it in a way that I don't think a lot of comic artists pay attention to.
Right. I don't like. Do you read Deadly Class at all?
I have the trades. I always mean to read them, but I've never like really got into it. I think it looks amazing.
Yeah. No. Wes Craig's awesome, but I actually I feel like it's not a perfect comparison, but I kind of feel like Bordertown reminds me a bit of the vibe of Deadly Class, where or of just in the sense that the kids feel real for what they're trying to do and when when this is taking place and who they're trying to be. It's like you never really question that these kids are like these teenagers are teenagers because like they just feel real and each of them feels really like lived in. Even like what's the name of the skinhead kid? Blake. Yeah, I mean like that kid, like that just that looks right to me. Like all the characters do. I do like that you have like some nice little touches in there too, like DC proper, because like Quinta is wearing a Superman shirt, and then there's also the Bane or the Bane showing up. I love that. At least
that was in the script. Eric was like, "I want you to draw that Bane commission that you did." Because I had done a commission where I did like a synthesis Bane. When I get commissions for like a character, like sometimes where it's like draw some character like Bane specifically, where I have like an idea of like the coolest possible version of Bane, sort of like the Grant Morrison, all of this stuff existed and happened to this guy. Like that's that. Like he has tattoos for like Talia and Poison Ivy, and you know, because he's always been like in these weird romantic relationships that were like just kind of like bizarre
right
in like the different movies, and I thought that was so sick. And even in like the Gail Simone like comic with Scandal, yeah, thank you, from Secret Six. And so I have like stuff like that in there. The tattoos didn't make it in because I just forgot to draw them. But like that style is like luchador, but also the Tom Hardy version, and also like whatever.
Yeah. No, it definitely, like the mask reminded me of the Tom Hardy version, which I am a unabashed fan of. I know some people are not into the voice, but I like Tom Hardy being weird.
I love that voice. I love that movie.
Yeah.
My second favorite Batman movie behind Forever.
I actually really love, like, people shit on Dark Knight Rises a lot, but I actually think it's a super rewatchable movie, except for Matthew Modine's character constantly calling Joseph Gordon-Levitt a hothead, which annoys the shit out of me.
When I went into Dark Knight Returns or Rises, I was like, this movie is going to suck. Because the bloom had worn off of Dark Knight. Like, by the time I went in to see that movie, I had seen that movie like twice more. And I was like, you know what? This is not a good movie. Like, this is kind of like annoying. The Heath Ledger, that's a great character that he makes in that movie. But like nothing makes sense in it, and like nothing is like that interesting except for him when he randomly shows up.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like ready to like just hate this movie, but I went to see it with friends, and just to say I saw it, I went and watched it, and like I cried in that movie.
I have to admit, I get emotional every time Michael Caine is like saying or talking to like the graves, and he's like, "I failed you," and I'm like, "Oh no, Michael Caine, don't be sad."
When Michael Caine sees Batman at the end of the movie,
yes,
and he did it, I cried, and I was like, "Holy shit, this movie touched me." So I love that movie. It's like the most operatic of those movies,
big time,
which I think is sick.
Yeah. So I want to talk about Tamra's colors. Tamra Bonvillain's colored you on the book. She colored you on Nighthawk. Did she color anything else?
She did the 2 issues of America, and she did a Secret Wars demanting that we did with Kyle Starks.
Okay. So what is it about her colors that you feel like complement your line art so well?
Well, she could color anybody and make them look awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, people like to say like that it's like us working together that is like what's great. I'm like, no, it's just Tamra that's great. Like, Tamra is just exceptionally good at coloring. So I get the benefit of being able to say like, yes, we're an art team. But it's just like Tamra's a good fucking colorist.
Right.
But what I do think that we work well together at is because I do color a little bit, that I will give her ideas of like what I think would be good. And she will interpret those in her way. And it's usually better than what I had in mind.
Right.
Like specifically this book, the last scene like the whole book is very hot and like intentionally so. It's in Arizona, and I would send her like images of like the Charles Barkley jersey as like this is a just like this is a palette idea. Like, and the funniest one that I sent her, because I had sent her like also like a Diamondback jersey and also a Phoenix Coyotes hockey jersey.
Yeah.
But the one that I sent her that was like, this is like, I'm very serious right now. I'm going to sound crazy, but I was like, do you remember the soda Crush in the 90s?
Yeah. Like, wait, like
you remember
the orange one?
Those black
the orange
cans.
drink?
Is it Crush? I might have it.
Wait, no, that maybe I'm thinking Sunkiss. What is Crush? I thought Crush was orange too.
Well, there was many flavors of this soda that I'm thinking of.
Right.
I think it's Crush. But anyways, yeah, I think it is Crush.
Okay.
I just looked it up. But in the 90s, they had these like black cans, and they would have like two colors on it, and it would be like Crush Strawberry, Crush whatever, like lemon lime, orange, fruit punch, etc. So I sent her this image, and I'm like, on this scene, I was thinking strawberry and this, and I was like, she was like, are you serious right now?
Oh
like,
my
she's
God.
like, and I was like, oh, I'm 100% serious. Like on Twitter, she had sent it out like, always love working with Ramon because he always sends me the best color reference, and it was like that. And on the last scene specifically, I was like, okay, like breaking from that, I just need this to feel like a Sprite can. I was like legitimately was sending her images of Sprite stuff from the 90s, like it's all blue and like lemon lime, like bright neon green and yellow. And I was like, it just has to feel refreshing because we've seen nothing but like sweltering heat the entire issue, and this has to just be like you're taking like a crisp drink of Sprite in the middle of this like warm fucking oppressively hot comic.
Yeah.
And she nailed it. Like at first she didn't quite get it, and then she like understood what I meant when I started sending her like, a ton of Sprite images. Yeah.
I do want to compliment you really quick. The face when the Chupacabra is called out is I don't know what it is about that face, but like it makes me want to adopt that little guy. He's very adorable. The Julieta was not wrong in the fact that
cute.
He's very cute. He seems so happy to have his skulls
cute.
again.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like a lot like in this thing, I really want to play up that like Chewie is a cute thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Tamra is just amazing, and she lets me like with Nighthawk. I would send her pictures of Yeezys, and I'd be like, Tamara, this is not the color that I like. I don't want the shoes to be this color. I want the page to be this color. like the neat, like the green, like the weird, like muted, like lime green. That can be a highlight, and then like this, like leathery purple, and then this like bright ass pink will be blood. And she was like, okay, like, she's like, all right, yep. And I would like send her Instagram filters, like this is a flashback, and I want it to feel like a flashback how we would tell flashbacks today, which is through Instagram filters.
Yeah.
And she was like, she can do that. She's amazing. So. Yeah, no, she's. I've worked with some, pretty good colorists and stuff. I've worked with a bunch. Like Ian Herring is, who I worked with on Ease for Extinction. He's great, but I didn't have like a dialogue with him about anything.
Right.
And when I work with Tamra and I are like really good friends, and we talk like almost every day. So like whether or not we're working on something or we are, like we just chat all the time. So. Yeah, I would like send. Yeah, when I got the book Nighthawk and my schedule, like I was like, "Can you work this in?" And she was like, "Yeah." So then we've been working together ever since. Like when I get a book, I say yes, but can Tamara color it?
Right.
And now people are like, "Of course," because you guys work together all the time.
Right. I mean, but the nice thing about having that dialogue too is it seems like it allows you guys to actually have a proper collaboration, and like where you can find out what the right answer is, and you can feel comfortable that you can send a pair of Yeezys to her and she'll understand what you're going for. And
And the
that's
plus
rare.
side for her is, yeah, I don't send notes like when the colors are done. Like sometimes she'll do something that I like isn't what I would do, but like it's very rare when I have to send a note that's like, oh, I don't really like, I'm not into this or whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And if there's like a nitpicky thing, I just like, nah, like that's, she did that for a reason. I'm just gonna like, you know what I mean? Like I used to be kind of bad about like nitpicking colorists and stuff, but with her, I don't really need to because she's so good, and because I just trust her to like if she did it, she knows why, and I don't need to like question it. So it's like a mutually beneficial thing. She knows that I'm not going to be a problem case, and I know that she's going to do something awesome over what I draw. So
Yo, everybody, I want to take a second to talk about my friends over at Ahoy Comics. They're looking to shake up the publishing industry with a bold new format: comic book magazines. What are those? Comic book magazines will feature traditional full-length comic stories plus extra material like prose fiction from Grant Morrison, cartoons from Shannon Wheeler, and more. And Ahoy is debuting in September with 2 titles. First is The Wrong Earth, a 6-issue miniseries from Tom Payer and Jamal Igle about parallel Earths, heroes, and vigilantes and what happens when they trade places. The other is High Heaven, a 5-issue mature readers miniseries from Payer and Greg Scott about a chronic malcontent who dies and goes to heaven, but he still can't help but complain about everything. Look for those in comic shops everywhere this month from Ahoy Comics. And now, back to the show. So before we move on from Bordertown, I actually want to ask about like the response to the book, which has been like, I don't know, I mean, it's kind of amazing. You kind of have like the full spectrum. You have like the strongest positive and also like the ridiculous comic skaters. Yeah. But I do want to start with the positive part because it's the first Vertigo book to sell out since 2013, which is amazing. And right. I do want to note that
that was Neil Gaiman's Sandman.
Right, exactly. But I do want to note that I was apparently part of a mass religious experience when I read it, which was incredible. Yeah. So what's the good side of the response been like?
Well, like the best thing is like there are a lot of Latinos that felt underrepresented in comics.
Right.
And with this book, a lot of them champion it so hard and they're so passionate about it because this is the first time that they felt like this is a comic for Latinos by Latinos that like it's not like everybody. I want everybody to read this book, right? I don't feel like we close people off from reading it if you're not like Mexican, if you don't have that background. But if you do, there are little things that people like pick up on that they think is so great that like to see that represented, or just like ideas about identity that like a lot of like biracial people have,
right? That
they've never seen expressed before in any media.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like pretty powerful for some of the responses we've got. Like teachers have said like, oh wow, like I've taught this in my class because it's only been out like a couple weeks, but in the time that it's been out, they've been like, they read it and they're like, this is what I'm always trying to express to kids and they don't quite get. So they've like told like their kids to like read this one page of Bordertown
right.
to like sort of sum up this feeling.
Yeah. I really like that line that Eric had in the book where it was where after Frank says he's half Mexican and then Julieta is like letting him know like you're not like a centaur of like ethnicities. Like I thought that it was interesting because it was like it kind of recontextualized it for me as like a reader, and I was just like, oh wow, that makes a lot of sense. Like people always describe themselves as like, oh, I'm half this and I'm half that, and I'm just like, yeah. I don't know, it makes sense.
Yep. I mean, it's definitely just it's something that Eric had grew up with because he is like Frank. He has a white mom and a Mexican father.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that he related to personally. But yeah, like it's something that like a lot of biracial kids, they don't feel a part of either culture, and that's something that like spoke to them.
Mm-hmm.
Like we had talked to this guy who was a writer, and he was saying like he loves Miles Morales because he is Puerto Rican and African American, just like Miles is.
Right.
He's like, and I love that, but like he's talked to Bendis and it's like, yo, this is nothing like my experience. Like there is nothing in this that speaks to that.
Mm-hmm.
Like you wrote a kid, which is cool. But this book, he was like, this spoke to that stuff that I've always had a problem like seeing in media.
Mm-hmm.
So that was awesome. And it was awesome. Just also like, yeah, like, I said, like the religious experience shit. Like there are so many people like that caught on as like a funny bit that then like they felt like, oh, like, I'm in on this joke that like would, people would see it that didn't know about, like, what the fuck are they talking about?
Well, it's
Yeah.
kind of funny, like the when you talk about like the business of comics and like having brands and stuff like that, and like I feel like Border Town has its own vibe, partially because some of the stuff you're saying, like the Mr. Vertigo comics and like the religious experience stuff, it's a joke, but at the same time it kind of tethers you to it because you're just like, oh, I know this because of that. Or like even like the chips and salsa, like I said, it's like it's funny how there's all this subtle stuff around the book, or maybe not subtle. I mean, you were saying it's a mass religious experience, but I mean it really works for it, and it's funny how that works out.
Yeah, it was pretty great. Like we were able to like a lot of that is just my doing because I'm like, if I'm gonna promote the book, I don't want to be cheesy and be like, hey everybody, you want to like buy the book, whatever. It means so much to me.
Welcome.
Yeah. Like I was like, no, that's corny. Like I hate when people do that. But I also need to promote the book.
Right.
So like I just made a bit, like I like to joke around. So, and like the nice thing is like Eric on the other hand is very earnest about like how much the book means to him, how much the Latino community like would like, blah blah blah. Like he's that guy where he's very earnest and like sincere about that, and that allows me to be a lunatic about it.
You balance each other.
You know
out.
what I mean? Yeah, it really do. Like I'm free to just say the wildest shit.
Yeah,
and like there's no pushback. Like in fact, like one of the dudes who works like in marketing for DC, like he thinks it's amazing. He's like, that's
it makes
so
his job
good.
easier.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he doesn't work on this book specifically.
Oh, okay.
But he was just like, he works on other stuff. But he was there. I met him at San Diego, and he was like, dude, that stuff is so funny.
Well, so I actually work in an advertising agency and online social media, and like I did a presentation this past week where I talked to like my own agency basically about how like the value of being weird on social media. And I'm not saying that like you should always do that or something like that, but at the same time, it's like if you have something that's like super memorable, it's kind of like we were talking about the themes earlier with movies and stuff. It's like if you have those themes, like I feel like Jurassic World, which I think is personally think is a terrible movie. I think that movie was at least partially a success, if only because people love that theme so much and they get so nostalgic for it.
Sure.
And it's like if you have something that can connect you to it in like a subconscious way without even thinking about it, you're like, I want to be part of that religious experience. I want to be able to tweet about that. And then next thing you know, people are buying it because it's like it's weird, but at the same time, it's like it stands out amongst everything else that's happening.
Did you ever see that disinfo lecture that Grant Morrison did about sigil magic?
I did not.
He did this speech at like a disinfocon thing. It's like maybe an hour long, maybe like 40 minutes. And he talks about creating sigils and it's like using chaos magic to achieve your goals. But it's basically like hacking the universe by creating like a symbol that is representative of whatever like your goal is.
Sure.
Right. And he's done it and it works. And he says like every corporation and every religion uses it. That's why Target has like a Target symbol. And McDonald's has the arches.
Right.
And like this, it's like, it's just marketing, but it's also like he says that it's also just like hacking the universe and giving this symbol power. And like creating like a viral thing is so like fun and cool. But it also like, I think it does help. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, totally.
So like when I was like getting some like notoriety and stuff online, like the shoe thing, I've associated myself with people like shoes. And you know who wears shoes? Fucking everybody. And like when I go and I like do these Subway pictures and people think, oh, it's so weird that Ramon like loves Subway.
Right.
But like there's more Subways in the world than any other fast food franchise. So then people will just be in the street, see a Subway because they're everywhere. And they'll just like, in the back of their head, they'll think of me. It's like that George Costanza thing where he makes his name a jingle, like Costanza.
Yeah.
Like it's the same thing. Like I'm infiltrating people's brains in like these subtle ways.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're cognizant of it. Like they're definitely not. And the Border Town stuff, like the religious experience stuff, I think like tying myself to religion The vague sense of religion was a success.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was also like a joke because the Watchmen, like Venom Better Than Watchmen stuff, was
Oh,
like,
that's working really well.
yeah. So I was like, oh, we're better than the fucking Bible.
Wait, I have to actually bring up a patron of mine asked a question, and it ties into something you just said. Alex Chung asked, his question was, "Hi, welcome to Subway. What can I get you today?" So your Subway brand is very strong. It is very
Right,
strong.
yeah.
But I mean, like that stuff is super important though. Like actually, I did a podcast at Big Bang Comics in Dublin.
I love that.
When I was
Those
down at
guys.
was that.
I love those guys.
Yeah, they're great. But one of the things I asked was basically is like, is it good enough to just be good at being an artist today? Is it good enough to just be that? Is it important to have something that you kind of like you own? Not really a brand, but just like something you stand out for. And I don't think I certainly think you can be good enough just by being a good artist. But at the same time, I think anything you can add to that helps. And I think all the stuff we're talking about helps.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely like there are people that do that really well. Like I think Stegman did it really well.
Right.
And there are people that are very obnoxious about it. And I won't say their names,
Right.
but they are people that when a book comes out, like, yeah, you know about it, but you're not like happy to hear about it.
Right.
Because they're just like cluttering your feed with like bullshit.
The problem with Stegman is now I only think about his Ready Player One tweet because it was too good.
I don't remember it.
Oh, it was when that poster came out and the kid's leg was like 50 miles long.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I just think about that poster because it was so ridiculous and I somehow didn't notice that to start with. But I did want to ask about the opposite side. I have to admit, when I was Googling interviews for you, I came across the most ridiculous headline I've ever come across.
But I'm racist?
Yeah. It was like the bounding into comics like post where it was like DC Comics artist Ramon Villalobos' racism exposed. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What the fuck? And
Yeah. Like, that was super funny because, like, when I read that article, like, I had forgot. Well, no, I had not forgot about it. But I think I had shared my, like, FEMA camp tweet because it was when a writer for, like, New York Times or something got fired because she had made some jokes against white people and she was, like, an Asian woman.
Right.
And they were like, she's racist, so she's fired. Right. So I was like, oh, that's hilarious. That somebody would think that. I wonder what. I know I've made tweets about white people.
Right.
Like, let me see what they are. And like some of the first ones that I saw were like, if I'm president, I'm putting all white people into FEMA camps. So I was like, I tweeted that. I was like, yeah, this holds up. This is still a good policy. Like, if we could figure out money for like healthcare, we're putting white people into FEMA camps.
I saw your the Avengers post where you had a picture of a bunch of saltines. Wasn't it saltines?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a long running bit from back in the day where every time one of these movies would come out, it was like some white person in a costume, and I was like, oh, it'd be so funny to just post a picture of like a cracker. So I did that, and I did it like every single time. I think I even did it on like one of the movies that was like more like racially diverse, and people got all upset, and I was like, you don't get the joke. At this point, it's not about them being white, it's about them being boring.
Right.
But yeah, no, that was a funny like their thing cracked me up because it's so disingenuous. Like,
right.
I'm clearly joking, and also like half of those tweets I would say something about white people, and then I would be like, just kidding, white people, I love you. I'm in Starbucks right now. Like, that is that kind of shit. And they were like, he tried to backtrack. It's like, no, I was never serious. There was nothing to backtrack.
Right. I mean, if you look at your...
But yeah, it's silly. These people are not serious people.
Right.
They're jokes.
Well, and that's, I mean, that was one thing. I was curious if it like phased you at all, and I didn't think it would because you just wouldn't take it seriously. Yeah, I mean, it's tough because they are being horrible, but they're also just like completely ridiculous human beings, and it's hard to take their like man baby complaints seriously.
So me personally, I've always been just sort of like, whatever, indifferent to it. But like Tamra is trans, and she's gotten so much more harassment than me. And it would be like waves of it. Like, it was not one like shitty tweet or like one article. It was like every day.
Right.
And it was bullshit.
Right.
So yeah, that would bum me out because it's like, well, she doesn't deserve that. She's just trying to live her life, and these people, for no reason, would just like pile on her and just say the most vile shit.
Right.
So like back then, I would kind of like wade into it, and when I would do that, they would jump on me. But if I didn't do that, and I was still doing like the same, like I'm not quiet about my disdain for like Donald Trump or Republicans in general.
Right.
And there would not be like the same level of like vitriol that they would have for like trans creators. So, it's just, to me, it always seemed like they were shitty and weak because they wanted to pick on the most vulnerable people.
Yeah.
And now that they've sort of like thinking that they can like, pick on the Scott Snyders of the world, it's like, fucking have at it. Like, yes, you go ahead and try to argue with Neil Gaiman, Scott Snyder, like Bill Sienkiewicz, like you're not going to win that argument. You're not going to win that fight. Like,
right.
You look silly.
Yeah. No, I totally know what you're saying. I mean, that is the horrible thing is that they just 100% go after like fights that they perceive that they can win and then just pile on, and it's horrible. But I mean, they're just, I don't know. It was interesting that it's funny how they can say that they're not racist, but then they specifically attack a book called Border Town, and I'm just like, you guys are, I don't know. It's such bullshit.
Like,
who buys it?
When I did America, like for 2 issues, I watched a review that they did of it, and they were just like, "Oh, hey," like they were doing like a shitty like Mexican accent that was like very like cartoonish, and it's like, yeah, you could say you're not racist, but I mean, like you're doing some like racist shit, and like whatever. Like I wasn't like offended, but just don't say that, just don't play coy. Like the racist shit was not nearly as like prevalent to me as the blatant transphobia, the blatant homophobia.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like my buddy Cinna would get like the craziest shit sent to him because he was writing Iceman at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And like that shit really fucked up like, his like sort of mentality and shit. So
yeah. No. And he's like the nicest guy in the world. And it just,
yeah.
I mean, not that it makes it, and people shouldn't be shitting on anybody, but I mean, like, I don't know. It's just awful. But let's move on from Bordertown and all this stuff. We have to bring up shoes. I'm going to only just have a couple more questions before we jump into 5 questions about you. So you're well known for giving characters great shoes. I even read that artists have come to you to ask about shoes characters should be wearing. What is it about shoes that you love so much, and why did you want to bring that love to comics?
So, when I was on like Tumblr and shit, a lot of it was just like trying to gain some sort of like presence of like what like to stand out, right? Like what do I do that like I'm into that people aren't into? And what it started with like wrestling and drawing wrestling boots and drawing laces.
Right.
And I felt like it gave that like a texture that my art didn't have when it was just drawing like comic book boots where it's just like line across the leg.
Right.
And I had a cousin who's like super into shoes, and my brothers were too. And I would ask them like, "Hey, what's like a cool pair of shoes to draw on like this character?" Like I think the first one I did was like Toe Jam and Earl, and they were like, "Oh, do this." So I was like, "Okay, cool." So I did that, and then I was like, "Oh, that was kind of fun. I like the way that looks." Like I was kind of just fascinated when I was looking at that shoe of just like building up the pieces of it that make the shoe, and then it just became about like storytelling of like, well, what shoe would this character wear? Like I remember I did like I was doing a lot of these drawings that were like X-Men women of like different sort of like eras and aesthetics and stuff, and I wanted it to feel true to whatever like year that was.
Right.
So I was paying attention to that, and then I was like, you know what? Like I'm really into shoes. I'm just gonna buy like a pair for myself. Like that I can wear, because I never used to do that because I would walk everywhere or take the bus and I would wear my shoes out really fast.
Mm-hmm.
But then like I got a little bit more money, just got like a car, and I was like, you know what? Like I fucking love shoes, so I started buying a bunch of them, and then like it just became like an obsession that was like absurd. Like the craziest it got was, I had asked Tamra like, hey, like I really want this pair of shoes, but I really don't feel like paying full price. Could I get you to sign up for the newsletter, like the Adidas like newsletter? Because then I can get 15% off of my next order. And she was like, "Are you kidding?" And I was like, "No."
Oh my god, that's amazing.
and she did it. so that I could get 50% off. And then she was like, "You motherfucker! Like they send me an email like every single day." um, but yeah, that was like a cool, like it was just something cool. And like if you think about like clothes that people wear, a shoe is like the most technological, like sort of architectural, sculptural thing that you have on your body.
Right.
And every, if you have somebody in like jeans and a white t-shirt, but the shoe is different, you could tell so much about that person just on that one article of clothing. So I was just like kind of fascinated by it, and there was like a whole subculture to it. And I'm fascinated just in general by subcultures, like in general, like of anything. Like that's the wrestling thing, that's the skateboarding thing, that's the like punk, rap, like whatever. Like I'm just fascinated by that kind of shit.
Mm-hmm.
So that that's the overarching theme of why shoes, but also just have a shit ton now. Like I delved into it.
I actually I find the sneakerhead culture to be super fascinating. I've read a lot about like histories for I read like this history that Complex did of like the Nike Air Force Ones that I thought was super interesting. And I read this piece recently about there's like the Sneaker Con, I think it's called, in Houston.
Yep.
That's like
they're everywhere.
Oh yeah,
they're
yeah.
everywhere. Like comic conventions are.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, like that whole thing is I mean, there's a lot of like the thing that I thought was really interesting about Nike Air Force Ones is like how like they kind of introduced the colorways and everything, and how like they're really similar to comic book variant covers in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And like
yeah, they are. Yeah.
That stuff is it's really cool. I mean, it's there's a lot of overlap with comic culture. It is a collector culture that has like a lot of passion behind it. I don't know. I mean, I actually always
And sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I always wanted to get more into it, but it's just like I don't know. I actually used to wear like hand me down shoes for my friends just because I just was cheap. I never want to spend money on it. And the only thing that I ever treated myself to as far as shoes is concerned is I have a pair of Nike Air Force Ones that are specifically branded for the Indiana Pacers because that's the team I'm a fan of. But they're like blue and yellow and they look great. Anyways, sorry, what were you gonna
say? Yeah, there's a huge crossover of fans of like shoe, like you said, it's a lot of that, like that same fandom. When I used to do cons, I used to always wear like wrestling shirts and do like wrestling prints.
Yeah.
And like there was a lot of crossover there too, and people would just be like so stoked because I was the only one that had done that.
Right.
And then it became like everybody did that, right?
Yeah.
Like now, like wrestling comics crossover, it's like everywhere. So then I was like, okay, then I'm out. I'm good. And then like at the same time I did that, like I started drawing the shoes, and now whenever I do cons, there's like a small handful of people that come up and notice the shoes specifically, and are like, oh shit, and then they'll notice that I have on some like shoes that are like not regular shoes, and then they're like, oh shit, like you're like a sneaker guy,
Yeah.
But yeah.
Have you ever talked to James Lucas Jones from Oni Press?
No, I don't know.
Oh, he's a big shoe guy. You should talk to him sometime. But I don't know. I always
what? I may have.
Yeah.
Now that you said that, I think I may have.
Yeah, because there's not a lot of people in comics that I think of when I think of shoes, and like you and James are two people I certainly do. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's good to have a corner. I think it's good to have something that people know you for. And it's like if you're the person who's like, oh, you're the shoe guy, I'm like, I think there's value there, because then like I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that's why Andy Corey chose you for Bordertown or anything like that, but I think being able to represent like a style and aesthetic for something that speaks to young people, because like that's one of the crazy things about the sneaker con, like all the people who are selling sneakers, is like so many of them are so young. There's like 16-year-olds who are making like six figures a year reselling sneakers, and I don't know, it's a young person's game, and it's like I don't know, I'm like I said, not saying that Andy hired you because of that, but I think it probably helped. Anyways, it's all really interesting to me, but I did want to close with 5 quick questions about you, the person. And to start with, I want to talk about basketball. You're a Golden State Warriors fan, and the season is rapidly approaching with the Warriors having...
I'm a fan of fucking legends of winners, dude.
Well,
God level.
I want to talk about Boogie, because I want to know how you feel about Boogie.
Okay.
Because he's going to be your 5th man. He's recovering from his Achilles tear.
Right.
How do you feel about that? Like, are you excited to have him on your team? Are you nervous, or somewhere in between?
I'm somewhere in between. I think it'll be exciting when he's back and he's healthy. I think for them it was a small risk, high reward.
Because they could cut him
Like
if
small
he
risk.
messes with it.
Yeah, exactly. They could cut him and it means nothing because they have a couple centers that they like.
Right.
And it's a 1 year thing. And it's great for him because he gets to use their great facilities to like heal.
Right.
And like I said, I'm in this area, so I remember when he was out here in Sacramento and just killing it.
Mm-hmm.
So like I think he's great. I think he's hilarious. I think he's got a good relationship with those dudes from like the Olympic
especially
days.
Draymond, it seems.
Yeah. Did you know that their nickname that they've gotten already?
What's that?
The Tech Bros.
What?
Because they have the Splash Bros.
Right.
And that's supposed to be like the Bash Bros or whatever.
Right.
And this is the Tech Bros, because it's like they get techs all the time, like technicals.
Okay. I thought it was like related to like
also,
Silicon Valley or something.
But that's why it's a great nickname.
Yeah.
Because it's both. But also because they get technicals. Like
they
crazy.
get so many technicals.
So, yeah.
Actually, I think between those two and Kevin Durant, you might actually lead the league in technicals this year.
Oh, they led last year without him.
Oh my!
Yeah.
Then you're definitely gonna win.
Yeah. No, they're. So I'm excited about it. I don't think he'll mess up the chemistry. I'm nervous about this league this year for a number of reasons, but it's like they've already got 3 championships. Like,
yeah. I gotta say I enjoyed the last one, if only because I bet my friend I took the Warriors and he got literally every other team on winning the title, and the winner would get a nice steak dinner for both them and their wife. And so I've yet to collect on that, but I did win that. So thank you, Warriors.
What I'm wondering though is like, well, what kind of lunatic chooses the field? Like,
hey, you know what? If Houston didn't go 0 for 27, it could have been a completely different situation. I mean, how do they miss 27 straight 3-pointers? It's impossible.
But that's the thing is, how do they make all those other ones? It's they were always lucky that they didn't miss all those shots.
Yeah.
Like their percent, like they were bound to have one of those games.
Yeah.
It sucks that they had it in the finals, but it also shows how bad their coaching was. How do you miss 27 because you shoot 27 in a row that you miss?
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
They deserve to lose that game. They deserve to lose a couple games before that. They barely squeaked out 2 of those games.
Right.
So, and that was with Iggy hurt for most of the series.
Right.
James Harden like banged into his knee. That's all.
Ooh, some Harden slander. All right. I want to jump into some more slander. I read an interview where you said, and I quote, "Fuck LeBron James." I don't know if I can stand for that slander. I love LeBron. What's your LeBron beef? Is it because of the finals?
Yeah.
Just that?
Yeah, but you know what though? But I've never liked him.
Really?
Like outside of basketball, I think he's great. He's a great ambassador for the sport. Seems like a great like father, husband, whatever. Clearly a smart businessman, clearly like a guy who pays attention to the news and is like, outspoken about like issues that are important.
Mm-hmm.
But when he came into the league, I was in high school, right?
Right.
And he came into the league and he called himself King James. He put out a book his freshman year called Believe the Hype.
Freshman year of high school or his rookie year in NBA?
Freshman year of like the NBA.
Yeah.
Like his rookie year.
Mm-hmm.
He put out a book that was like an autobiography and he was like 18 years old.
Right.
And I was like, fuck this guy. I was like so against him and I just never warmed up to him. And like, I always thought he was like a little overrated.
Right.
He was good. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of the system that he played was just like, give him the ball and let him fucking juice stats.
Right.
And then he went to Miami, and how could you like him?
Oh yeah,
right?
I was out during the Heat years, but I was totally in during all the Cleveland years. I don't know why that makes sense, but I totally am one. I've been rooting for Cleveland lately.
And then he tried to correct the narrative by going home.
Right.
But I knew it was false.
Well, because he went to the Lakers.
He's got no integrity in basketball.
Right.
In basketball. His shoes are ugly.
Man, you're getting nasty.
His hairline is a joke. He was good in Trainwreck.
He was actually pretty good in Trainwreck. I got to give him credit for that.
I'm not against him. but I just don't like him as a basketball player. I don't like the style of play he does. I don't like how he wrecks teams. Like, I don't like the mentality of like he's the guy. Whereas you look at the Kings team that I liked.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't about that. It was
Yeah.
about team basketball. I loved the Spurs because it was about team basketball. I love the Golden State Warriors. That's the platonic ideal of basketball.
Yeah.
Teamwork, passing the ball, fundamentals.
I do have to say it made me very sad that like Kevin Love has become a shell of himself after he went to the Cavs, because Kevin Love was really good when he was with Minnesota, and now he's just like
Kevin Love was good in the Cavs.
Well,
that is another thing that I dislike about LeBron James. People have just slandered Kevin Love because they need to build up the fact that LeBron's doing it on his own.
Right.
So then every other player that Kevin Love plays with is trash. Kyrie Irving was trash for 3 years until he left. And then people are like, oh, we don't have Kyrie Irving anymore. Well, you shit on him for the last 2 years. This dude had the same amount of like points average in the finals as LeBron, maybe slightly less.
Right.
But he didn't do it juicing stats like LeBron did. He didn't do it, he did it the right way. Nobody appreciated him. He single-handedly won that title. I'm going to go Skip Bayless. He hit the shot of shots.
Who are you talking about? Who are you talking about? LeBron or Kevin Love?
Kyrie.
Oh, Kyrie. Oh, yeah, that was amazing.
So, like, I was there. He broke my heart. And so I was like, I fear Kyrie. I don't fear LeBron. I knew they would get swept if they didn't have Kyrie. And they did.
I do have to say my favorite part of that title was the fact that Kevin Love actually was one-on-one against Steph, and Steph couldn't score on him because Steph
was hurt.
I know, but I was horrified for Kevin Love, because Kevin Love, let's be honest, he's a great offensive player, but he's not great at defense. And the fact that he actually didn't get totally crossed up, which like everybody in the world expected, was pretty impressive.
He would have if Steph was slightly less hurt.
I know.
That man was playing on one leg.
I know. Okay, let's move on from basketball.
No. Steph Curry is better than LeBron James. And nobody wants to admit that. He changed the game. When people look back on this era, they're not going to be like, "Oh, LeBron James, he did nothing. He's a nobody."
Oh my god.
Steph Curry already has as many championships as he does, and he's going to get another one.
Oh, he's going to get a lot more. This is some spicy takes. I didn't expect this. My God.
You brought up something intensely personal.
LeBron is definitely... I don't think LeBron's going to get any titles with the Lakers, but I don't know. I just think the Lakers situation is stupid, but I don't know.
That's a hilarious situation. I can't wait to see what happens.
I mean, I'm a Pacers fan, so I love Lance Stevenson, but that's going to be stupid. Like, I don't even know what's going to happen. It's so weird. And like, I read about their plan. They're like, we just want to surround him with like secondary ball handlers so he doesn't have to feel the pressure. I'm like, I don't think Lance Stevenson is going to relieve the pressure, or Rajon Rondo.
No.
It's like, it's really dumb.
Yeah, I mean, I think they want those guys to just see if any of them will work as role players. I mean, they got JaVale McGee.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
Right.
JaVale was great as a Warrior because they could throw him out there when there was like, 4 other guys that were going to like just go off regardless. He was a great like pogo stick essentially, but like he was a liability defensively. That team is going to be a joke. It's going to be crazy. So they have him, Rajon Rondo. That's going to be fucking interesting. They have Lance Stevenson. I think that they have those two specifically so that they'll get technicals with the Warriors every time they play. like Draymond Green may punch somebody when they play.
Oh. Yeah. That's Lance. No, I mean, I think the funny part about it is Lance, I'm pretty sure, actually thinks he's better than LeBron, and he's probably going to try to become the alpha dog somehow. It's going to be a weird season.
He might be better.
Anyway, oh my God, you really hate LeBron. My God. Okay, so
dude, when they were playing against the Pacers in the playoffs this year,
yeah,
look at like go back. Every game I said Lance Stevenson is better than LeBron. I'm like, he's locking this man up. LeBron has no answer for him.
Oh my God. Well, and Bogdanovic was also locking up LeBron to a degree, but
Bogdanovic is a legend. I've been on board Bogdanovic for a long time because I like to play with the Utah Jazz because I like on video games. Because here's the thing, I can't play with the Warriors. That's a cheeser move. So I usually play the Jazz because I felt like they always have like hilarious European players. So that's my move usually. Um,
They had AK-47. That was always my favorite nickname. I
and
can't.
AK-47.
Yeah.
They had Metman Okur, who was my guy. He had like a unibrow.
Did you ever listen to there was the road tripping podcast that Channing Frye and Richard Jefferson did when they were at the Cavs together?
No, dude, because I'm not here for Cavs
I,
propaganda. I don't want to hear how great LeBron James is.
They had Tim Duncan on it, and it was pretty amazing though, because Tim Duncan talked about how they used to play World of Warcraft together, and apparently Andrei Kirilenko was like really obsessed with World of Warcraft, which I find to be hilarious. I don't know. I just find that whole thing to be really funny.
You know who the number one gamer in the league is right now is the god Gordon Hayward.
Yeah, Gordon Hayward is a huge gamer. Like he goes to like esports conventions.
Huge gamer. Oh, crazy. It's so good. And I feel like LeBron left the East because he knew, like, when I play the Celtics, who's across from me shooting at small forward? Gordon Hayward. He was terrified. Like, he got lucky Gordon Hayward broke his leg.
Yeah.
He knew, like, this man can play the game in a deeper level than I can.
Oh my God.
And they've got Kyrie, they've got Marcus Smart, they've got a bunch of
Tatum.
players, they have Tatum.
Yeah.
LeBron fears the Celtics. So he left. He's scared. Now he's in early retirement. He's not chasing Michael Jordan. He's chasing Michael B. Jordan. Oh. He wants to be a Hollywood guy. That's a Skip Bayless line. It's my favorite thing in the world. He says it like almost every episode.
Oh God, that's incredible. All right, we got to move on from basketball.
Sorry.
So let's talk about. I have one quick shoe question. You're not just you don't just draw shoes. You're a big sneaker fan yourself. What's your favorite pair of shoes you own, and is there like a pair that you like desperately desire to own?
Okay. Yes. So that's a multi-tiered question.
I know.
The favorite shoe that I own to wear is an Ultra Boost of any kind.
I see you got Justin Greenwood some.
What?
Didn't Justin Greenwood buy into that?
My guy Justin. We went to when we were in Portland. I could get passes to the Adidas employee store.
Mm-hmm.
The Adidas employee store is like an Adidas store, and everything is half off. So you need passes to get in. But every year I acquire some passes, and I brought Justin with me because we were rooming together, and we fly in together. He lives out here too, and he wanted to buy some running shoes, and I'm like, oh, get some Ultra Boost. You'll never want to wear it. He only ever wears Converse shoes. So I told him, you'll never want to wear these goddamn Chuck Taylors again. Get these Ultra Boosts. And like, he has not taken them off since. His wife was like, no, he doesn't wear those shoes anymore. He's all Ultra Boost all the time. So those are my favorite to wear, period. My favorite shoe, like sort of sentimentally, is an Adidas Element Tricot Refine,
mm-hmm.
which is a very like sort of obscure running shoe they put out. It was the first shoe that I was like, this is my favorite shoe. And it was just because it was like environmentally conscious. It was like this very interesting design of like minimalist and looks great. And it was it was like cheap as shit. But that was my first like introduction into like shoes that I bought.
Mm-hmm.
And then also I have a pair of Kobe's like crazy ones. I don't know if you've ever seen those ones. They were like Kobe's first Adidas shoe, and they look like they were based on like the Audi like cars. So they're very sculptural. They look very interesting, and that's my favorite like shoe aesthetically. So sentimentally, the Adidas Element Tricot Refine. To wear comfortably wise, is the Ultra Boost, and then my aesthetically favorite shoe is that one.
Yeah.
The crazy one. It was called the Kobe one,
mm-hmm.
but they can't use Kobe, so they call it the crazy one now.
Mm-hmm.
The shoe that I would want to own, yeah, I mean, I don't, there's plenty, but there's no one grail shoe really. There is some like, I kind of always want to buy some like Vans. There's two pairs. There's the Charlie Brown pair, where it's like a yellow pair of shoes
mm-hmm.
with like the Charlie Brown stripe across his shirt across the center.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's these ones called the Piss and Semen ones that are Blood and Semen. They were like the Andre Serrano, that painting that photograph that he does.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's like that, but it's on a shoe. It's on a Vans Old School, and it was a collaboration with Vans and Supreme.
Mm-hmm.
And those are very expensive, but I kind of always feel like I'm just going to buy them one day if I could find them. Those I really love. I love those shoes in general. Like that's why Frank wears them in Border Town.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm looking at them right now. Those are great.
Yeah, they're all old schools. I love the old school ones specifically. So I those are some that I want. But other than that, like there is no like because it's not about like the specific shoe. Like people think that I like judge people for having bad shoes. No, never do that. I only think that people could wear like more comfortable shoes or shoes that are better fitting into like an aesthetic. But I'm never like, oh, your shoes are ugly.
Yeah,
that's never happened.
All right, so last question. You rep hard for 90s rock bands on Twitter to the point where sometimes I'm not entirely sure if you're kidding, but I think you're serious. If there was a March Madness bracket for all the 90s bands, who would you pick as the winner for the 90s bands?
You know, I should do one of those because I don't know.
You could do it.
Deftones are my favorite 90s like nu metal band, but I also love Pavement. Like that's not one of those bands, you know, that's like Pavement is a band that people think is cool. They may not like their music, but they're acknowledged as being like a cool band.
Yeah, totally.
And you know, the Deftones are like maybe less so.
Right.
But I love the Deftones, and Pavement is from Stockton. Deftones are from Sacramento. I also really love Cake, also from Sacramento.
Yeah, I actually really like Cake too. I had no idea Pavement was from California. I was
Pavement
talking to
from Stockton, California.
I was talking to my wife about them recently because like that was a band when I was growing up that like everybody like they were so like beloved amongst like critical people and everything, and that I always kind of wanted to listen to more. But like I feel like by the time I got it, like started listening to them, I just didn't really. I don't know. It's not that I didn't get it. It's just like it didn't really work for me, and I always want to try again because I don't know. Everyone I knew loved them, and I don't know. I need to try again apparently.
Yeah, people think I think because I like bands that are like uncool or like, you know, shitty or whatever, that I also don't like good music.
Right.
But I do. And I do like the good music more than like I do like Pavement more than like Limp Bizkit. But I do like Limp Bizkit.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I think that there's like an entertainment level and then there's also like a different level. And like, I don't know, Deftones is probably more entertaining and more, I don't know. There's like a vibe thing that Pavement probably doesn't have, but maybe Pavement's better band. So it's like they're scratching different inches for you.
Deftones is very like intellectual, but I don't. They started off as nu metal,
right?
But like you listen to anything after like White Pony, and it's like pretty like sophisticated.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I actually listen to anything after White Pony. Apparently, I need to.
I mean, White Pony was sophisticated, but like after they did that, they were like, "Oh, we don't have to do like rap rock. We can do whatever we want."
Right.
And a lot of it is inspired by like '80s sort of like new wave and stuff, which is sick because I love that stuff too. I love like New Order and Depeche Mode and The Cure and stuff like that.
I kind of feel like Deftones was always considered like the highest of the class of those bands, though. Like people always respected what they did, even when they were doing like the kind of nu metal stuff. Like they were like the best of that like style, I guess.
Yeah, but out here it was like the same, you know. But if I took out like the classy ones, I love Slipknot like to an absurd degree. You know, and like Slipknot was not respected like that, but I did love them, and I did love like the early Korn stuff. But all those bands they stick around enough to fall into like shitty trends, and then they get lame. But Deftones never did that,
right?
So I love Deftones.
Yeah, that's awesome, Ramon. That is all I have for you. Thank you for coming on to talk about everything.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with artist Ramon Villalobos. You can find him on Twitter at Ramon Villalobos and his work in Bordertown at Vertigo Comics. If you're a fan of Off Panel, make sure to check it out on Patreon. If you back the show on there, you not only support the show, but you get early access to each week's podcast, access to exclusive written and audio content, and more. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes or Stitcher and give the show a rating or review while you're at it. You can find the show on social media as well, like the show on Facebook at /sketched, that's SKTCHD, Follow it on Twitter at @sketchcomic or follow me at @slicefriedgold. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Dave Slusher, Greg Peterson, Kieran Marcantonio, WMQ Comics, Akil, Greg Lockard, Kokachi, Phil White, Ben Becker, Sean Pinello, Kent Heidelman, Philip Sevi, Al Ewing, Ryan Alcock, Nick Michelin, David Kelly, Robert Wilson IV, Nick Poletto, Dylan Campbell, Owen McCready, Brendan Fletcher, Michael Garland, Gary Maloney, Jonathan Nielsen, Matthew Groom, Jason Assey, Mike Gillis, Adam Bogert, Xavier Files, Maria Schweitzer, Matthew Taylor, Tyler Turner, Dan Guarino, Nick Patera, Jacob Sorelli, Ford Gilmore, David Baraldi, Evan Blazer, Brian McRae, Ira James Udaskin, Henning Allers, Modern Magic Stories, Nick Hall, Bruno Batista, Bobby Angus, Bjorn Basin, Darren Neely, John Hendrick, Steve Anderson, Phil Nall, Ian Maxfield, Cliff Chang, Benjamin Shippert, Colin McMahon, Chris Palmer, Maxwell Schmidt, Scott McGovern, Nathan Fairbairn, Kat McKenzie, Lou Iovino, Nicholas Kesslake, Greg Rucka, Ryan Mail, Adam Highfill, Nicholas Gardner, Andrew Corrigan, Fiona Staples, Chris Morris, Chris O'Halloran, Mark Abnett, Mike Murphy, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim DiMonacos, Norbert, Nick Lowe, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics and Art in San Francisco. You guys are all the best. A quick thanks to the band Wolfpack, whose excellent track Outro from their album Volmilch opens and closes the show. Give them a listen as they're totally rad. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.